The sky over 7 was never truly bright. The planet lived in endless twilight, caught between a dying sun and thick clouds that never cleared. Had learned to love this strange half-darkness in her 3 years on the colony. She found beauty in the purple shadows, and the way the rocks glowed faint blue when night grew deeper. Her job was to study the alien life on this world while other colonists dug for precious minerals in the ground. Most people thought her work was a waste of time. The company wanted metals, not knowledge about strange animals, but did not mind being alone. She preferred the quiet wilderness to the noisy mining camps. On that day, she had walked far from the colony to study a nest of burrowing creatures. She had spent hours taking notes and pictures. When she finally looked up at the sky, her heart dropped. The clouds had turned from to angry green. Lightning flickered inside them like the pulse of a living thing. An iron storm, the worst kind. Grabbed her equipment and started running. The colony was 2 hours away on foot. She would never make it in time. Her only hope was to find shelter and wait for the storm to pass. These storms could last for days. They could kill a person in minutes if they were caught in the open. The wind began to scream. It pushed against her back so hard that she stumbled. Sand and small rocks flew through the air like bullets. Pulled her hood tight and pressed forward, searching for any crack in the ground, any cave, any place to hide. Then she heard it. At first she thought it was just the wind playing tricks. But as she moved closer to a pile of fallen rocks, the sound became clear. It was crying, high and sharp and full of fear. Something was alive under those rocks, and it was terrified. Dropped to her knees and looked into the darkness between the stones. 6 eyes stared back at her. They glowed soft orange in the shadows. Then she saw more eyes, and more. 3 small shapes were pressed together in the tiny space, shaking so hard she could hear their bodies hitting the stone. Wolf cubs. Her breath caught in her throat. She knew what they were. Every colonist knew. The wolves were the most dangerous predators on the planet. Adults stood as tall as a man and had 6 powerful legs built for speed. Their jaws could crush bone. Their claws could cut through metal. The colony had lost 4 people to wolf attacks in the first year. These were just cubs. They were the size of large dogs, with thick fur that flickered with pale bioluminescent light. That light was supposed to glow steady and bright. But these cubs were so scared that their glow kept dying and coming back, like a candle fighting the wind. Looked past them and saw why they were alone. A larger shape lay on the ground behind the rocks, the mother. Her body was burned and still. Lightning had found her. The cubs cried louder. They had watched their mother die. Now they were alone in a storm that would kill them too. They were predators, yes, but right now they were just bobbies who had lost everything. Colony rules were clear. Wolves were Class 3 threats. If you found cubs, you were supposed to report their location so a security team could eliminate them. You were definitely not supposed to touch them. You were definitely not supposed to feel sorry for them. But could not stop looking at those 6 small eyes. Wet with tears, she did not know wolves could cry. The storm hit with full force. The wind became a solid wall of pressure, could barely breathe. She knew she should find her own shelter and leave these creatures to their fate. That was the smart thing. That was the safe thing. She thought about her mother back on Earth. She thought about being 8 years old and afraid of thunder. She remembered crawling into her mother's bed during storms, hiding under the blanket, feeling her mother's arms wrap around her. That warmth, that safety, the knowledge that someone bigger and stronger would protect her from the scary things in the dark. Every child deserved that. Every scared, small creature deserved someone to hold them when the world turned cruel. Unzipped her thick, insulated jacket. The cold hit her chest like a punch, but she did not close it again. Instead, she opened the jacket wide like wings and leaned toward the gap in the rocks. The cubs went silent. They stared at her with those glowing eyes. They could smell their mother's death on the wind. They could smell that this creature in front of them was different, strange, not pack. Every instinct should have told them to bite, to claw, to fight. But they were so cold, so tired, so alone. The smallest cub moved first. It crawled out of the darkness on shaking legs and pressed its body against the stomach. She felt its heart beating fast and wild against her skin. The fur was softer than she expected, like touching warm clouds. The second cub followed, then the third. They climbed over each other to get closer to her warmth. Their small claws pricked through her shirt, but she did not push them away. She pulled her jacket closed around all three of them and held them tight against her chest. They fit, barely. Three alien predators curled into a ball inside a human woman's jacket, hiding from a storm that wanted to destroy them. Stood up slowly. The cubs whimpered but did not struggle. They had decided to trust her. She did not know why. Maybe they were too tired to fight. Maybe they sensed something in her heartbeat, her warmth, her smell. Maybe they just needed someone to choose them, and she was the only one there. She started walking toward the colony. The wind tried to knock her down. The lightning turned the world white and purple. Every step was a battle. But she kept moving, one foot in front of the other, her arms wrapped around the precious weight against her chest. Inside her jacket, the crying slowly stopped. The cubs pressed closer to her heart. Their glow steadied and grew warm. Walked through the storm, carrying three small lives that the universe had decided to throw away. She did not know what would happen when she reached the colony. She did not know if she could keep them alive. She did not know if they would grow up to be the monsters everyone feared. But she knew one thing with perfect certainty. She would not let them die alone in the dark. Not tonight, not ever. 3 weeks had passed since the storm. Small research sat at the edge of the colony, far enough from the main buildings that nobody bothered to visit. This had always been a lonely thing. Now it was a blessing. The cubs had grown. They were no longer small enough to fit inside her jacket, though they still tried. Every night they piled onto her narrow bunk, 6 legs tangled with her 2 warm bodies pressed against her sides. She slept better than she had in years. She had given them names. The largest one, a male with dark blue fur, she called, which meant mountain in the old language of her grandmother. The smallest, a female with fur like silver moonlight, she named, meaning sky. The middle one, another female with fur that shifted between purple and pink, became Bora after the storm that had brought them together. Feeding them was difficult. Wolves ate meat and lots of it. Had started requesting extra protein rations, claiming she was doing experiments on local bacteria. The lie was thin. She knew it would not hold forever. But watching them eat, watching them play, watching them grow stronger every day, she could not bring herself to stop. The cubs learned fast. They understood that they must stay quiet when strangers were near. They knew to hide in the storage closet when the door chime rang. They had learned the sound of footsteps and would run to greet her whenever she came home, their tails wagging, their tongues trying to lick her face. They were predators built for killing. But when rolled onto his back so could scratch his belly, he looked like any puppy on any world. When brought her a rock she had found and dropped it at her feet like a gift, felt her heart swell with love she had not expected to feel. This was madness. She knew this was madness, but she could not stop. On the 23rd day, the door opened without warning. Was sitting on the floor, Bora's head in her lap when walked in. Was another researcher, a woman about's age who studied rocks and minerals. They were friendly but not close. They sometimes ate dinner together when neither wanted to be alone. Stopped in the doorway. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Bora lifted her head and growled, and emerged from behind the bunk, their fur beginning to glow with warning light. 3 juvenile wolves, each one capable of serious harm, stared at the intruder. Raised her hand. The wolves went still. They did not relax, but they did not attack. Finally found her voice. It came out as a whisper. "What have you done?" Did not try to lie. There was no point, she explained everything. The storm, the dead mother, the crying cubs, the choice she made and could not unmake. Listened without speaking. Her face showed many emotions, fear, confusion, something that might have been anger. When finished, sat down heavily on the only chair. They will kill you, said. Not the wolves, the colony. If finds out, he will have them destroyed and you will be sent back to Earth in chains. I know. Then why? Looked at the 3 wolves who had settled around her like guards, had her head on 's foot, was watching with careful eyes. Bora had gone back to sleep in her lap, trusting completely that her human would handle this strange situation. Because they needed me, said. Because they were small and scared and alone. Because I had warmth to give and they needed warmth to survive. What else could I have done? Left them, said. Let nature take its course. They are predators, their kind has killed people. Their kind, not them, stroked Bora's fur. They are not monsters, they are children. They did not choose to be born dangerous. They just want to be safe and loved like any child anywhere. Was quiet for a long time. She watched the wolves. She watched the way they looked at, the way they leaned into her touch, the way their glow brightened when she spoke softly to them. This is insane, finally said. Yes. I should report this immediately. Yes. Stood up, she walked to the door. His heart pounded in her chest, but she did not move. She would not run. She would not hide. If this was the end, she would face it with her wolves beside her. But did not leave. She turned back, her hand on the door frame. My grandmother had a dog when I was young, she said. An ugly old thing with 3 legs and 1 eye. Everyone said she should get rid of it. It was useless, they said. A burden. But she loved that dog until the day it died, and she cried for a week after. She looked at with something new in her eyes. Understanding, maybe, or respect. I will not tell anyone, said. But you need to be more careful. Has been asking questions about your ration requests. He is suspicious. Relief flooded through his body. Thank you, thank you. Do not thank me. I think you are crazy. I think this will end badly. But I also think, she paused, struggling to find words. I think what you did was very human, the most human thing I have seen on this rock. She left without saying goodbye. Sat in the silence, her wolves pressing close. She knew was right. This could not last forever. Sooner or later the truth would come out. Sooner or later she would have to face the consequences of her choice. But not today. Today, she had 3 warm bodies against her skin, 3 hearts beating in rhythm with her own, 3 lives that existed because she had refused to let them end. Today, that was enough. Made a small sound, almost like singing, yawned and showed all his teeth, then laid his head down and closed his eyes. Bora shifted in his lap and sighed with perfect contentment. Outside, the twilight of 7 deepened toward night. Another storm was building in the distance, lightning flickering on the horizon. But inside the small at the edge of the colony there was warmth, there was safety, there was a family that should not exist but did. And that thought was the most wonderful thing in the universe. 2 months after the storm, a ship came down from the sky. Watched it land from the window of her stomach tight with worry. Ships meant visitors. Visitors meant danger. Her wolves were too big to hide easily now. They were the size of large earth wolves, with thick muscles under their glowing fur. They could not fit in the storage closet anymore. The ship carried a delegation from the Galactic Union. 3 aliens stepped out onto the soil of 7. 2 of them were short creatures with many arms, the kind that did paperwork and counting. But the 3rd one made catch her breath. She had read about them but never seen one in person. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, with a body like a stick insect made of black glass. 4 long arms folded against its chest. Its head was a smooth oval with no eyes that could see, only a thin line that might have been a mouth. They were famous across the galaxy for their cold logic and their complete lack of emotion. This one was called Envoy. It had come to decide if the colony could expand into new territory. For the next few weeks, tried to stay invisible. She kept her wolves inside and did her work far from where the delegation traveled. But the colony was small, and word spread fast. People whispered about the human scientist who lived alone at the edge of the settlement. They wondered why she never invited anyone to her. The truth came out on a cold morning when finally lost patience. Was the colony administrator, a man with a hard face and harder rules. He had been watching for weeks. He had counted her ration requests. He had noticed the scratches on her arms that she tried to hide. When he came to her door that morning with 2 security guards behind him, she knew she could not run. He pushed past her into the wolves were in the back room, but they were not quiet. Growled, a deep rumble that shook the walls. The security guards drew their weapons. "Open that door," said. Stood in front of it. "Please, just let me explain." "Open it or I will." She had no choice. She opened the door. The 3 wolves burst out, not to attack but to protect. They surrounded in a tight circle, their fur blazing with light, their teeth showing. Stumbled backward. The guards shouted and raised their guns. "Stop!" screamed. She dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Please, please, they will not hurt you. They are just scared. Please do not shoot them." The room went still. Nobody moved. The wolves kept growling, but they did not attack. They stayed close to, watching the strangers with bright orange eyes. His voice shook with anger. "You brought predators into this colony. You have endangered everyone. Do you understand what you have done? They are not dangerous. Look at them. They have been here for 2 months and they have never hurt anyone. They are tame. They are family. They are monsters. They are children." The argument might have gone on forever, but then a new voice spoke and everyone went silent. "Interesting." Envoy stood in the doorway. Nobody had heard it arrive. It moved without sound, like a shadow with long limbs. Its smooth head turned toward and the wolves, studying them with whatever senses it used instead of eyes. "I heard the disturbance," said. Its voice came from a device on its chest, translating its thoughts into human words. "I came to see. I am glad I did." They walked into the room. The wolves growled louder, held them back, whispering soft words into their ears. They trusted her. They stayed. Stopped a few meters away. Its head tilted to one side. "These creatures," it said, "they are wolves, Class 3 predators. The Galactic Union has orders to destroy them wherever they are found. They have killed many beings across many worlds." "They have not killed anyone here," said. "No, they have not." His head tilted the other way. "Instead, they guard you. They obey you. They look at you with what I can only describe as love. This should not be possible." Stepped forward. "Envoy, I apologize for this incident. We will deal with the animals immediately. The woman will be punished according to." "Be silent." His mouth closed with a click. Moved closer to. She felt her heart racing, but she did not back away. The wolves pressed against her legs, ready to fight if needed. "I have a question," they said. "I have studied many species. I have seen prey and predator, hunter and hunted. I understand these relationships, but I do not understand this." It pointed one long finger at the wolves. "You took predators into your home, creatures that could kill you, creatures that would eat you if they were hungry enough. You fed them. You named them. You loved them. Why?" Thought about the storm. She thought about the crying cubs, the dead mother, the cold wind that wanted to swallow everything. She thought about warmth and fear and the simple need to be held. "Because they were not predators that night," she said. "They were children alone in a storm, so I became their mother." Was silent for a long moment. Its thin mouth moved slightly, as if it was trying to form words that would not come. "My people do not have mothers," it finally said. "Our young are independent from birth. We do not understand this concept of nurturing. We have studied it in other species, but we have never truly understood why it exists." The looked at the wolves, then at the wolves again. Perhaps now I am beginning to understand. It turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold it paused. Administrator, you will not harm these creatures. You will not punish this human. I wish to observe this situation further. Consider it part of my official assessment. His face turned red with anger, but he could not argue with a Galactic Union envoy. Left without another word. Sat down on the floor, her body shaking. The wolves piled around her, licking her face, whimpering with concern. She laughed and cried at the same time, holding them close. They were safe, for now at least they were safe. Outside the window, she could see Envoy standing in the colony square, its smooth head turned toward the twilight sky. Watching, thinking, trying to understand something that had no translation in its language. Something called love. 6 months after the storm, the sky turned green again. Knew what that color meant. She had seen it once before on the night that changed her life. Another iron storm was coming, bigger than the first one. The colony alarms screamed across the settlement. People ran for shelter. The mining machines shut down. Everything living tried to hide. But not everyone made it inside. A repair team had been working on a broken water pump 3 hours from the colony. 5 people, including himself. When the storm warnings came, they tried to drive back. They almost made it. The call came through the colony radio at sunset. The team's vehicle had died. Something in the engine had been fried by the first wave of electromagnetic energy. They were stuck in the open with the full storm coming fast. At the speed it was moving, they had maybe 2 hours before the worst of it hit. Without shelter, they would not survive. Search teams could not go out. The lightning was already too dangerous for vehicles. Anyone who tried to reach them would die too. Listened to the radio chatter from her. She heard the fear in people's voices. She heard team calling for help, their words breaking up as the storm interference grew stronger. She heard the colony leader say the words nobody wanted to hear. We cannot reach them. There is nothing we can do. Looked at her wolves. They had grown so much in 6 months. Was nearly as tall as her now, a powerful creature with muscles like steel under his dark fur. Was sleek and fast, built for running. Bora was always watching, always thinking, always finding paths that others missed. They knew something was wrong. They could feel the storm coming in their bones. Their fur glowed bright with nervous energy, and they paced back and forth across the. She thought about how he had wanted to kill her wolves. She thought about his hard face and his cruel words. She had every reason to hate him. But she also thought about the 5 people with him. Workers who had done nothing wrong. People with families. People who were scared and cold and waiting to die in the dark. She could not save them alone, but maybe she was not alone anymore. Put on her heaviest jacket and opened the door. The wind almost knocked her down. The wolves pressed around her, shielding her body with theirs. They did not try to stop her. They did not run back inside. They understood somehow what she was going to do. I need your help, she said to them. There are people out there, scared people, cold people. Can you find them? Lifted his head and sniffed the air. The storm was full of strange smells, lightning and ozone and burning dust. But somewhere out there, far away, were 5 human bodies, 5 heartbeats, 5 lives. He turned and started walking into the storm, and Bora followed them. They moved through the chaos like they belonged there. The wolves knew this land. They had been born on it. They understood its rhythms, its dangers, its secret safe paths. They led through gaps between the lightning strikes, through valleys where the wind was not so strong, through darkness that should have been impossible to navigate. Could barely see. She could barely breathe. But she kept her hand on his back, feeling his warmth through her glove, and she trusted him completely. An hour passed, then another. The storm grew worse. Lightning crashed around them so close that its ears rang and her skin tingled. But the wolves never stopped. They never hesitated. They were a pack on a hunt and their prey was survival. Finally, Bora stopped. She barked once, sharp and loud, squinted through the flying dust and saw a shape ahead. A ravine. At the bottom, huddled against the rocks, were 5 human figures. Looked up as slid down the slope. His face was white with cold. Ice had formed in his beard. The other 4 were worse, barely conscious, curled into balls and shaking. Hal whispered, "How did you find us?" Did not answer. She was already pulling emergency blankets from her pack, wrapping them around the nearest workers. But the blankets were not enough. The cold was too deep. They needed warmth that technology could not provide. Understood first. He walked over to the nearest human, a young woman whose lips had turned blue, and lay down beside her. He pressed his body against hers and wrapped his thick tail around her legs. His fur glowed warm, pulsing with heat. And Bora did the same. They found the coldest people and gave them their bodies, their warmth, their life. The workers were too weak to be afraid. They simply clung to the wolves like children clinging to their mothers. Stared at who had settled beside him, the same wolf he had wanted to kill, the same creature he had called a monster. Now that monster was the only thing keeping him alive. Something broke inside him, saw it happen. The hardness in his face cracked, and underneath was just a scared man who had almost died in the dark. He put his arms around his neck and buried his face in the warm fur. His shoulders shook. He was crying. Sat down next to them. The storm raged above, but here in the ravine, surrounded by wolves, there was a small circle of warmth, a small circle of safety. They waited together through the longest night. The storm screamed and roared, but it could not touch them. The wolves kept them warm. The wolves kept them alive. When morning came, the storm had passed. The sky returned to its normal purple, led the survivors back to the colony, the wolves walking beside them like honor guards. People came out to meet them. They stared at the wolves with new eyes. They had heard the story over the radio. They knew what had happened. They knew who had saved the repair team. Stood in front of the crowd. He was still weak, still shaking, but he made himself speak. "I was wrong," he said. His voice was rough. "I was wrong about them. They are not monsters. They are—" He stopped, struggling to find the right word. "They are pack, and apparently we are part of their pack now." He looked at. For the first time there was no anger in his eyes, only something like respect. "Thank you," he said. "You and your wolves, thank you." Smiled. Beside her sat tall and proud, his fur still glowing with fatting warmth, pressed against her leg. Bora yawned, showing all her teeth, and looked extremely pleased with herself. They had been monsters once, dangerous animals that everyone feared. Now they were heroes, and knew deep in her heart that this was only the beginning. 1 year had passed since the night opened her jacket to 3 crying cubs. The wolves were fully grown now, stood taller than a magnificent beast with fur like a dark ocean at night. When he walked through the colony, people moved aside not from fear but from respect. Had become the fastest thing on 7, able to outrun the wind itself. Bora was the gentlest, often found lying near the colony's children, letting them climb on her back and braid ribbons into her glowing fur. They were still predators. They still hunted in the wilderness, bringing back strange creatures to eat. They still had teeth that could crush bone and claws that could tear steel. But they had learned something that their species had never learned before. They had learned that humans were pack. Humans were family. Humans were worth protecting. And the colony had learned something too. They had learned that monsters were not always what they seemed. Envoy had stayed the entire year. They had postponed its report again and again, claiming it needed more time to observe, but knew the truth, was fascinated. The alien had spent its whole life believing that the universe operated on simple rules: predator and prey, strong and weak, survive or die. What it had seen on 7 broke all those rules. On the last day before its ship was scheduled to leave, came to find She was sitting on a ridge overlooking the colony, watching the twilight deepen. The wolves lay around her in a loose circle, was on her left, his great head resting on his paws, was stretched out on her right, eyes half closed. Bora was behind her, a warm wall of fur against her back. Moved silently across the rocks and stopped a few meters away. It stood there for a long moment, watching the scene with whatever senses lived behind its smooth face. "May I sit?" it asked. Nodded. The folded its long body down onto a rock, arranging its limbs in a way that looked uncomfortable to human eyes. "I have finished my report," said. "I am recommending that wolves be reclassified. They will no longer be listed as pests to be destroyed. Instead, they will be protected as potentially sapient beings worthy of study and respect." Felt her eyes fill with tears. "Thank you, that means everything." "Do not thank me, I am simply recording what I have observed." Paused. "But I confess, I still do not fully understand what I have observed." "What do you mean?" There was quiet for a moment. When it spoke again, its translated voice was slower, more careful, as if it was choosing each word with great effort. "I have studied 17 species across 4 sectors of this galaxy. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have watched empires build themselves on strength and logic and the simple will to survive. I thought I understood how the universe worked." Turned its head toward. "But I have never seen any species do what you did. You took predators into your home. You fed them with food you needed for yourself. You loved them when they could have killed you with a single bite. And you did this not for any reward, not for any advantage, but simply because they needed you." "They were scared," said. "They were alone, anyone would have helped them." "No," his voice was firm. "That is not true, my species would not have helped them. The young are born capable of survival. We do not nurture, we do not protect, we do not love, we simply exist alone until we die." The alien leaned forward slightly. "I have asked myself many times why humans have spread so far across the galaxy. Your bodies are weak. You are short. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. By every logical measure, you should have died out long ago. And what did you decide?" Was silent for a long time. The twilight grew deeper. The first stars appeared in the purple sky. The wolves shifted and settled, content in the presence of their human. "My people have a saying," finally said. "Survival is the measure of worth." We believed this was universal truth. The strong survive, the weak die, and that is the only judgment that matters. It looked at, who had lifted his head and was watching the alien with calm, intelligent eyes. "Your species has taught me otherwise. You do not measure worth by what you keep. You measure worth by what you give. You take the weak and make them strong. You take the dangerous and make them gentle. You take the lonely and make them family." Stood up slowly. "This is why humans spread so far so fast. Not because you are strong, because you make others strong. Not because you survive, because you help others survive. You carry the universe inside your hearts and you share that warmth with every creature you meet." Did not know what to say. She felt tears running down her cheeks, but she did not wipe them away. Began to walk back toward the colony, but after a few steps it stopped and turned. "One more thing. When I return to my people, I will tell them what I learned here. I will tell them about the human who opened her jacket to 3 dying cubs. I will tell them about love." Its thin mouth moved in what might have been a smile. "I do not think they will understand, but perhaps someday they will want to try." They walked away into the gathering darkness. Sat on the ridge until the stars filled the sky. The wolves pressed close around her, their fur warm against the cold night air, made a low sound in his throat, almost like a question. "It's okay," she told him. "Everything is okay." She thought about the night of the storm. She thought about the crying cubs, the cold wind, the moment when she had decided to open her jacket and let them in. It had been such a small thing, such a simple thing, just a human being a human. But that small thing had changed everything. It had saved 3 lives. It had changed a colony. It had reached across the stars and touched the mind of a species that did not know how to love. That was what it meant to be human. Not strength, not intelligence, not technology or power or the will to conquer. Just the simple, powerful truth that love was worth giving even when it was dangerous, especially when it was dangerous. Another storm was building on the horizon. Could see the lightning flickering in the distance, green and purple and white. But she was not afraid. She had her pack around her. She had warmth to give and warmth to receive. She had everything she needed. Bora made a soft sound and pressed her head against his shoulder, yawned and closed her eyes, stood up and walked to the edge of the ridge, watching the approaching storm with calm, fearless eyes. He looked back in the darkness his fur glowed like a beacon, like a promise. Whatever came next, they would face it together, a human and her wolves, a family built not on blood but on a single moment of kindness in a storm. And that, was the most human thing in the universe.